early skirmishing is the name of the game for V5, and there's no better champion at that than the Zoe. Now, just looking at the draft right here, we do still have Pantheon on the table, which is, even though he has been nerfed, still pretty high priority and does go well with that AP fix in the middle lane. So I do want to see if they head towards that. Meanwhile, OMG, I think Alistar for cold is one of the best champions that you could possibly get. It's his most played, and I would say one of his most dangerous.
But Gnar instead. So you leave open the jungle pick to V5. They can take what they want. Lilia and Udi's already gone away. The Olaf banned as well. Let's see which direction WeiWei goes for, because he's essentially taking one off the table for Aki, you mentioned, because they wanted to give Alielie the best of the Gnar.
This is super weird. I don't think at this point in time you actually want to blind pick a Gnar this early in draft. Gnar is not a champion you can flex, and we have seen the game plank still up. The Aurelia is still up.
Langx can play Jace as well.
And there's Camille too. So I don't really like this coming out from Alielie. I feel like it's very easy for him to get punished. But on the meantime, you know, E5, they decide to walk straight into it, so they take the Renekton top lane anyway. It's understandable given the Nidalee.
Yeah.
But I still feel like it's... I don't know. I would have preferred sort of a solo counter instead of a Renekton that, if you don't get the gank in, actually gets counter out later by the Gnar.
And if you're looking for that, you know, the guarantee as well, either force flash or get the CC follow-up. I mean, Camille with hookshot, wallshot, you know, does a bit of that, but I guess you want the on-click stun that comes with Renekton. So we got a priority up there for Langx in the top side still. However, Gnar probably going to feel pretty happy about this, going, well, you picked Renekton into me, so I'll make the best of this matchup, as Gnars always do. We do have a bit of global priority put into OMG's composition, though. The Galio picked up this time. That was banned away. Note the Twisted Fate from V5 to make sure that one of the global threats was removed. So OMG picking this up before they go to the second phase.
We are seeing OMG go back into their bread and butter picks. A lot of times they want to snowball their bottom side, so they will get globals out here. And just getting the Galio is super nice. They still have Alistar on the table as well. So if they're able to take that, Alistar headbutt pulverize into a grand entrance plus Justice Punch combo. That's a very long crowd control duration. If you get tagged by it, you're basically dead in the bottom side. So I think it's up to V5 to really come up with a bottom lane that can play defensively enough to sort of dodge out everything that OMG is going to be throwing at them.
Which is why I like that OMG have started target banning the AD carriers that, okay, can either sit by themselves or can partner up quite nicely with things like Thresh still available. The Aphelios ban to me really speaks true. OMG have taken away quite a lot, and V5 on the other end, taking away some of those supports that Cold has been great on in the past. Wouldn't be surprised with the Thresh, but instead the Graves. Aki's going to be on an island.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to find any great lanes to gank in his solo lanes right here. Neither of his solo lanes actually have an easy time. So I do expect him to head more towards farming or ganking at level 6. So Taliyah is actually a pick that's pretty decent at doing that. Again, OMG are likely going to be bot lane focused, and having its second global to follow up is quite nice.
But you're picking the Taliyah into lanes that Clement aren't going to have too much. I guess topside has the priority.
It's a level 6. It's a level 6 Taliyah.
Okay,
That's what it
thank
is.
you. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. This has been one of Aki's most picked champions too, just as a side note. He's been one of the few junglers left that have been willing to pick up Taliyah, despite the nerfs you mentioned earlier in the broadcast and how our clue speed has gone down a little bit from the strength we saw at the start of the season. Meanwhile, though, you're asking what V5 are going to do in the bottom lane, and there's your answer. The Xayah for trigger, and most likely ppgod partnered up with something nice. A composition that now has the poke added from Zoe, from Nidalee, but a safer bottom lane once trigger hits 6-2.
And we did talk about this. OMG already setting up another bot-heavy focused team composition, so I love the picks coming out from V5. You probably have the best defensive pick in the Alistar, and the same goes for the Xayah post 6 as well. It's going to be very difficult to actually kill them with your global combos once that does come in. And V5, they're setting themselves up to play super heavy into the top lane. Now, if this Renekton and Nidalee cannot sync up their crowd control, then in the later phase of the game, Gnar will actually be a very good counter pick against the Renekton. But in the early game, they do have kill pressure. I do expect a bit of a split map early on, and for V5 to kind of give up a lot of their minion waves in the bottom side if they feel threatened.
Because also at 6-2, this is something that Lyric actually pointed out yesterday, that Leona into Xayah feels quite nice, considering you have Solar Flare, you have the Zenith Blade, you have the Flash Shield of Daybreak. There's one ability to force out the ultimate from Xayah, but another two to also capture her afterwards. So a lot of follow-up here from the bottom lane support, which is a good option by Cold. Let's see if OMG can get that bottom lane snowballing. Let's see if they can do what they didn't do in game 1. But this time, put all the eggs into the basket down there, Clement, because we see the Galio, we see the Gnar top side, we know what their team fighting is. But if a Renekton and Nidalee find early access to the game, if the snowball comes ahead and even the Zoe feels comfortable in this game, V5 will get another early lead and then take it from there.
Top side is going to be very, very much V5 favored right here. You can see Langx having a good laugh as he takes the Renekton into the counter matchup of the Gnar.
Doesn't care.
And he doesn't care. It's totally okay for him. Meanwhile, watching a bot lane play defensive is something quite interesting from for V5, because most of the time ppgod does leave his lane for roams, and that will leave Trigger somewhat exposed in the bottom side. And we also have to mention that we have never actually seen Trigger play Xayah before, so this is going to be his debut on the champion. And you know, it's not always a guaranteed thing that everyone can play equally well on all champions in the meta.
As we get into game number 2, V5 on the blue side, picking up a win in under 25 minutes in game number 1. And I'm seeing a V5 that has the comfort in Mole Zoe. This is a pick that's banned against this team 80% of games. We're in best of 3s here in the LPL. 80% is a hell of a lot of games when V5 have already played 8 series. Game 1, it was also banned against him, but it slips through. It's first pick worthy for this team, and Mole carries games on this champion. So we're going to ask the question if it'll happen again, as Eric and Cold go in for the cheeky invade, but spotted out by ppgod and Trigger, waiting for it to happen.
Get a good chunk of damage coming out from V5's bottom lane. And just taking a look at the runes right here, we do have the Dark Harvest coming out from both junglers, so looking to snowball individually just a little bit more. And I do want to point out the overall compositions. We did mention this a little bit, but V5 have a really good poke composition. They definitely have range advantage, and they're going to force people to walk into them when they have the Blade Collar on the Xayah. The Feather Storm is going to be massive here. OMG are going to be the ones that have to engage. But talking about engage options, OMG actually have very, very good engage coming in themselves. Leona can tag someone with the Solar Flare, follow up with the Zenith Blade. That's the Galio going in as well. And the Taliyah can pick off targets from the side. So I actually think that this is a fight where I don't think V5's going to be able to land too much poke before OMG can throw a very choreographed, coordinated engage onto them and just take them out in the mid lane. So this is a series where I feel like even if V5 get the win, their sieges have to be very careful, or the Galio plus Leona can definitely do a number on them.
Get that re-engage. Is now in the bottom lane. Cold could be in a bit of trouble as the Feathers are about to fly in, waiting. Excuse me, Trigger's only level 1, of course, as that's blocked by ppgod. The Feathers won't be coming back in to correct myself. And V5 losing out on the level 2 trade. Cold going in aggressively. Now the wave pushing up, and Trigger and ppgod just waiting for that passive Alistar heal and to hit 2 themselves as they now do.
I love that trade done by Cold. Usually when you go in as the Leona first, you lose your Aftershock first and you lose the trade. But when he went in, he actually pushed Trigger and ppgod away from the minion wave, hit 2 in the meantime, and was able to get a very favorable trade plus a potion advantage on their AD carry. So very well done there by Cold.
We can also talk about the fact in the 2v2 as well, how good Kaisa is at the moment with Halo Blades, but I need to pause because WeiWei's ready to go topside. That's a flash. Spear is going to connect. The flash burn as well. And WeiWei on Nidalee, what a surprise. Picks up first blood.
Way too easy. He was even spotted out
Nice.
on the ward, but it just wasn't enough coming in right there. WeiWei is able to get the kill, and now it's OMG's turn to strike back.
Teleport coming in nice and quick. It's a level 3 on Alielie. Just come back to top lane. Seismic Shot does connect, and Justice Punch for the victory. Wuming gets him caught out.
Very early white flag coming out from Aki, you know, trying to get the team confidence going. He gets a flash, and I don't think WeiWei was able to respond to that in time. Very good chaining of the crowd control. I believe they used the taunt to actually keep Nidalee on the seismic shove for the full combo to get in. And that's going to erase away a lot. Plus, WeiWei took a relatively he took a relatively fast path into the top lane, so he is going to be down almost 3 camps compared to Aki.
Lost his buff. Aki has that CS lead you were just talking about with the with the camp differential. Hextech Alternator gets picked up on the first back, which is nice for WeiWei. Means we're getting the Night Harvester Nidalee, but you're right. Tempo halted for the time being, while WeiWei has to go and pick up some camps. And it's kind of disjointed by the pathing here, considering he would have loved top clear, head into bot after all said and done. Raptors, Krugs, the only thing available. We'll have to try and make another play and bring back some of the tempo that he obtained with his first kill.
And this is why I don't really like this draft strategy coming out from V5. I feel like if you see the Gnar blinded that early, I still feel like the go-to move is just to punish the Gnar, play into OMG. You know, the caliber of top laner between Langx and the 4 players that they have on OMG is still quite massive. And I don't think that they should have went for a jungle-reliant strategy on this top side. If Aki is able to zone out and just keep vision control on the top side, there's actually nothing WeiWei can do to kind of swing this matchup.
It's going to be hard from here on out, right? And as Wuming teleports back into the mid lane, we got to remember that from here as well, once this Galio hits level 6, his plays get that much harder to make with the hero's entrance available. With Aki getting mobility in the Weaver's Wall, this semi-global team composition makes it hard for a Nidalee to really exert pressure and even make that repeat play on the flashless Gnar, or even make a play across the map, because you always have to look over your shoulder thinking that OMG can join.
Definitely the case, and just for that reason, you know, I really would have preferred the Gangplank pick. I think the Gangplank pick actually helps out your bot lane survive double globals, and it's also a really strong counter pick into the Gnar as well. Instead, they went for something that's, you know, high risk, high reward in the Renekton plus Nidalee combo. And as you can see right there, with Aki's presence hovering so close to the lane, they just can't do anything. Like Langx and WeiWei can't go in super aggressively when they know that Taliyah is hovering around.
Can't farm his own camps, has to sit in the wave alongside with Langx, and WeiWei now goes back, but that's back all the way to base. Feels like this early game going well for OMG after one single response. I like how as well Wuming moves up and Mole has to pay the response as well. Can't just sit in the wave. He has a bit of a CS differential, but every time that Wuming leaves, Mole is going to feel threatened as well. Teleport into the lane. Aki, oh, he's still backing. Okay, had the Weaver's Wall, but wasn't willing to commit onto the Renekton, even without flash.
I love this call coming out from Eric. Like, he's reading the match quite well and realizing that, hey, this bottom lane from V5 is not going to punish us. They're not going to walk up and actually try and get turret platings because of our mid lane and because of that Taliyah pick that's already level 6 right now. So I'm fairly safe to just use the call right here. It does have a bit of regen and get myself that 350 extra gold later on into the game.
Puts him in a pretty strong position. Remember, we already talked about bottom side and how Eric needed to play this as well. Not up in CS, but you already mentioned the Cole, and that's a really valid point with the Noon Quiver that's just been picked up as well. It means Eric is going to be that one-item threat so much sooner as well as he gets to CS. I was just noticing on the map while we were flashing across that Mole's really bullying out Wuming here on the Galio, and that is another condition that if Mole is able to dominate the lane, push Wuming to low health and gain an advantage, then the Galio threat is minimized to what we've already seen with the hovers.
This is what we have seen in the matchup before. Zoe does bully out Galio in the lane just by herself. Just poking in with the range, and just chipping him down like that. So we have seen Wuming actually being forced back, but he didn't really want to. And Aki actually have to come in and save the wave just to make sure that you know, they don't lose any experience on their side of the map. So I do think that V5 are doing a good job just through Mole, just stop the bot lane priority from coming, the bot lane plays from coming in. But in the meantime, they're not going to be able to stop this one.
No, they're not. Wuming was able to push out the wave. Mole actually back there for the lost chapter too. Eric and Cold making their presence known in River just in case too. So Aki will be clearing this one out. Note that Alielie is also pushing up in the matchup and has a 20 CS lead too. So Aki picks up Herald and Clement. I want you to walk me through what he does with this Herald, how he can push that early game advantage, and how he can continue his lead in the jungle to give OMG stepping stones into a cleaner mid game.
So there's a couple different ways he could use this Herald. One of the more creative ones is to actually drop it mid and use it the same way you would for a Dragon Fork. and head towards a 4v2 bottom lane. That's kind of the play that I do gravitate towards because, you know, jungle can be any distance and still pick up the turret plates anyway. So you're not going to lose any gold by just leaving there. And that would definitely keep Mole and likely WeiWei in place in the mid.
And he's actually just been spotted out on the top side here, so the bottom play can start off. Spear almost connects onto Lalo, unfortunate hitbox, as Aki is going to start his bottom lane presence, getting the dragon. WeiWei goes for a second spear, and Lalo hasn't even budged. Clicked one mouse direction the whole time, and Aki now set up. Weaver's wall in hand, and Trigger and ppgod have to be cautious if they go too far in the lane.
V5 definitely need to find something here. They've been spending so much time in the top side, and this is, the more I look at it, the more I feel very disparaging towards this Renekton pick. It's kind of like digging a hole for yourself to climb out of, and then saying, hey, look at me, I can climb out of holes, I'm so good. But why do you put yourself in a hole in the first place?
Thank you for that analogy, Clement. Close call. WeiWei was 2 HP from stealing the scuttle. It does go down in the end over to OMG as they've already taken the dragon. They're just positioning River aggressively. Langx even moving down out of the lane. He's going to lose a little bit for this as Alielie pushes in the wave. He'll do it quickly with the Gnar as well. 1 or 2 minions will be gone as we're still watching Mole in this mid lane. Feels like the hope at this point, Clement, for V5 to pull ahead in this early game against the wall. Thank you. And Langx is just going to be beaten back into lane.
Fairly one-sided in the top side matchup. You know, Alielie is already considering backing anyway, so he's willing to get a bit of HP there. Whoa!
Not sure if Wuming wanted to go that far forward, but there you go. Solo kill again. We talked about this in the opening segment. Mole gets him, and even though it didn't look like it, he finds yet another onto Wuming.
Oh, that's absolutely huge for V5. We were talking about OMG trying to leave lane with this Galio. It's never happened. And that was a solo kill where Wuming was clearly trying to base already. So, you know, he should have just gave up on those turret platings, conceded some of that gold over to Mole, and just kept himself alive. But Mole finding something out of nothing. Now can Langx get away from this one?
Was Aki aware of his range for Weaver's wall? Not too sure. Stopped a little bit short of the top wave. He still has the Herald in play though, so this could turn into an evolved play at that as well. Cold's also joined up. He's on a ward. Langx has the Dominus available with Flash. We'll see if Aki pushes on out and attempts to make this play for his nut.
They are looking for the first tower play already. Cold is here, and so
but it's
is
a flash,
ppgod.
And you know what? Everyone from V5's here. Clement, Aki goes down, and uh-oh! We shouldn't have done it in the end. Waiting for the spear. Goes all the way into Cold's back, and Herald will get the charge. But at the end of the day, V5 saved that first turret, and they get a kill off the boot.
Oh, ppgod just changing the fortune so much. That headbutt pulverize definitely caught at least 2 targets, and Renekton, with all of his crowd control, was able to snipe down the targets relatively easily. I definitely felt like OMG could have kept their distance in that play. They didn't need to stay in range for the combo to actually land, but for some reason they did, and you know, that was a guaranteed positive play from OMG. They should have been able to anticipate ppgod being around that area. I just feel like the execution was a little bit off. Just stay a little bit further back. You get your guaranteed 320 gold, and you can walk back fine. That didn't need to happen.
It didn't, and with that overstep as well, the balance goes back. V5 up 1,000 gold. Clement, it's almost the 15-minute mark. V5 are trying to do it again. And raise that stat above the roof. Feels like V5 now in a very good position. Solo kill, the response play in the top side. Now, all of a sudden, WeiWei's kind of back into this game. We remember talking about the 20-25 CS lead that Aki had. He dies in the top side. WeiWei goes back to farming. And now suddenly the CS difference isn't that much of a difference. And across the map, V5 are starting to hold out, yet beat the CS from OMG. Just look at Mole versus Wuming. That in itself feels like it's probably the gold lead.
That's a 50 CS lead on the Zoe already.
13 minutes.
That's pretty damn crazy. And what that means is V5, if they find one chunk, then Nidalee just comes mid lane and they take down the mid lane tower. This Galio is probably never going to use his ultimate until we go into Drake team fights. That's a sad Galio.
And let's be honest, we talked about how Wuming could influence the map. I like the shadowing in the early game from OMG to threaten some of these side lanes, but We never actually saw Wuming execute on the ult, or Aki use the Weaver's Wall to block off for a play. Again, Trigger and ppgod paid a lot of respect for the bottom lane dive potential. We saw that Mole was never threatened because of vision control from V5, and Langx just turned the play that was the potential for OMG. So it does feel like options are getting limited, Clement. And again, I want to reiterate, if we're seeing it around the Dragon play in 15 seconds, does V5 feel comfortable just knowing that they can take the Dragon instead of maybe looking at the potential next Herald?
So in this fight, the most important thing is for OMG to actually find decisive engage. This is a massive power spike coming in from Mole and from WeiWei. They both just completed their mythics on this buy. So you have the extra burst coming out from Night Harvester, plus the extra burst from Luden Tempest. This is one of the strongest points that OMG have. And if they want to take an objective, they have to be super decisive and know if they want to turn or not. But kind of weirdly, V5 actually are not going to... They're actually not going to try and contest this one. Actually just going for the trade right here.
Oh no, the stat's going to be skewed, but technically they're still ahead. Look at the goal. 300 in their lead, so they are technically ahead at this point in the game. And Tara's going to go down in response, but the first break you mentioned in game 1 also going to go down to OMG in this game. WeiWei is going to trade the Dragon for their Herald. They didn't contest it, you're right. But at the end of the day, an Infernal in the back pocket, spawning the Mountain Rift. So it is a trade-off, but OMG with a team behind. Yet again, better for the team behind. Trading always feels nice when you're in this position.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about OMG's play right there. I feel like Mole and Nidalee could have changed the fortunes quite easily and got even more tempo off of the map. But they decide not to contest right there. And they just go for the guaranteed objectives on the other side. That's a bit of a favorable trade coming in from V5 at the end of it. I know the relative balance could be in favor of OMG by closing the distance, but for V5, they definitely get one extra objective out of that in that Drake. And just looking at the towers right now, I don't think there's a great place for Aki to actually use this Herald, for Eric to use this Herald at this point. It's very interesting that we're seeing Eric getting the Herald instead of typically the junglers, because AD carries are more just stuck in mid lane farming at this point of the map. So I'm kind of curious of what they do with this. Like, Kaisa is definitely a champion that could find a 1-3-1 pincer in one of these side lanes, but if you're not going to go for that play, then the Herald's actually very telegraphed. It's just always going to stay mid.
Going to be mid, and you know that the Kaisa putting it down as well is going to be matched by Mole, who's stuck in mid too. So a lot of the time, him putting down the Herald, that half a second where that telegraphed movement coming from it is going to be quite well read. Speaking of well read, Mole actually walking into a trap, but instead walks up towards the rest of his team. Pretty safe movement means that he gets out, and Trigger's going to solo take down this turret, while V5 are pinging down to try and stop OMG mid.
Yep, this is still in favor of V5 as they do get all three waves right here.
Save him. Save him. Almost hits Alielie in the end. Turret does go down. Mole's damage is immense. But hey, Herald gets a second charge. So for OMG, you'll take that. Unless this goes down too.
Oh, Jesus. No one's actually here. They have to burn a teleport just to defend their tower. I do want to talk a little bit about Zoe priority. On patch 11.2, people thought that she was actually pretty weak because of the neglect for going for the tier build. Like, if you're not building the Archangels as a mage, you're almost not in the meta. But this time around, we do see Horizon Focus being buffed up by quite a bit. Just extra free stats all across the board. Shorter range activation. You get a bit of extra AP. I believe 15 extra AP. So really good buffs onto the Zoe. We are going to see her be more prevalent, especially around that second item mark.
Yeah, I loved it before on the Zoe, but you're right, now the buff as well just makes it feel that much better. And a lot of the top tier LPL mid laners didn't really shy away from Zoe, even though the discussion around it was that, you know, she could be better, she doesn't fit into the build path that you were just talking about with mages. People like Mole, Scout, who else is a big Zoe player that I'm missing in this league? Knight, right? Even Yagao. Like, they were still playing Zoe. We could still see in solo queue that it was still a big champion for them. So I'm glad that Mole hasn't really lost his identity, even though we are in the new patch. This Zoe pick is still massive for him, and he's at 218 CS at 18 minutes in the game. Meanwhile, Wuming is 20 CS from getting Flame Horizon. That trouble level coming through means you need to run cold, close flash burned, and I think he was an inch off dying.
Yeah, that was the real flash coming out from Mole. Of course, he does have the unsealed spellbook, so not as damaging right there. But you know, very close from killing him. And this is the pressure that's being put on OMG right now. I think the game balance has shifted quite a lot just because of how fed this Zoe is. This is over 10 CS per minute right now. And that just means that the windows for OMG to set up their engages is going to be that much shorter. It's pretty much one paddle star, and you can't even think about the engages.
Yeah. Your life over in an instant. People like Eric, Arky, it's not really going to be much of a game. Hey, Clement, I want to notice that Wuming has picked up Night Harvester as the first item. Now, this does feel like a Proto Belt game where Eric is going to be the main damage source, but Night Harvester, I guess, to reposition in these fights. I want you to walk me through it a little bit because I haven't seen this much on the Galio.
So this is kind of an adaptation to the 11.2 nerfs, 11.1 nerfs, I believe, to Hextech Proto Belt, where the move speed after you get your Hextech Proto Belt out has been nerfed by 20%. That's actually a huge nerf for Galio, and it just means that it's much harder to actually get the taunt onto people. With Night Harvester, getting the 25% move speed, and it's pretty consistent throughout your entire trading pattern, actually works out in your favor compared to the Proto Belt.
Okay, I like the little adaptation of the build. At the very least for Wuming, now picks up his mythic item first. And we're close towards the second item here for Mole. I'll be tracking the CS as we go throughout. But for now, Dragon has spawned number 3. OMG lying in wait to get Langx, but this is the front line of V5. Cold Nidalee spotted out. Gnar is about to be popped up. No choice in the matter. As V5 are trying to delay it out, get Dragon to reset and move Alielie away. He flashes in for the engage. Dares the hero's entrance, the first one of the game. It's a perfect knockup at a 3-man. Pulverized from V5. The feathers fly into the backline. The root comes true as well. Trigger untouched over the wall. The front line perfect from V5. They poked from afar. Now they're ready to rumble from up close. WeiWei already has a double kill under his belt, and Arky has been sent home, packing away from the Dragon.
Oh, that was such a good start from OMG, but unfortunately, I don't think they found the main damage dealers coming out from V5. And a great play by ppgod, a quad 4-man knockup to deny any of the damage coming through, and it was so easy for V5 to just turn that one around.
We give ppgod the blessing on that one as well, Clement. By the way, he's 2-0-2, and along with WeiWei has the bounty on his head, so that was just a perfect engage and a perfect counter engage when Alielie flashed in to get Mr. Mole.
Oh, that was pretty close. He nearly got WeiWei right there, but ends up only getting Mole, and Mole's actually able to portal jump away, or Zania's, excuse me, first, to deny a lot of that damage, and just watch as the HP bars melt down with that 4-man quad coming out from ppgod. That's definitely a ppgod highlight right there. WeiWei is completely untouched, and also Trigger was across the ramp as well. So, unfortunately for OMG, they pulled off their wombo combo, but it didn't find enough of the backline threats from V5.
It looked like it was something great from Wuming as well, but Trigger over the wall, WeiWei poking down, everything used to kill Mole. But at the end of the day, there's so much more than Mole on V5. And the team that was pretty even with gold, now skyrocketing ahead, V5 with about 2,000 gold. Let's call it 1,700, what it is. In front of OMG at 22 minutes into the game. Baron has spawned, the Dragon they just picked up achieved, and this is now V5's game where they can start taking over, right? And from here, Clement, I want you to explain how they snowball and escalate this game. Maybe you don't need to. Baron has been started at 22 minutes, and V5 say, let's go.
I think it's relatively easy. Right now, any sort of chuck coming out from Mole is going to dissuade OMG for coming in. The great thing about poke compositions is that you don't have to play through this ramp. You're not going to have to go over this terrain to actually find it engages. All you need to do is just keep the enemy back. And with Primal Surge coming out from WeiWei, you can actually keep most of your members topped up quite well. So I like the idea of this Baron play. It's very easy for them to execute. And if OMG want to get in, they have to send 2 members across this ramp, and it might not actually end up just having their teams completely cut off. It's not very easy for them to for OMG to find a wombo combo against an Alistar that's sitting up on this Raptor ramp.
That's right, and you know, now it really counts that to get in range to set themselves up for the engage, the poke is going to be coming in pretty dangerously. Clement, I want to pull attention to the ward we saw on our screens. That ward saved OMG. Whoever put that down is probably going to get Employee of the Month. That was put in a brush and it spots out V5, but this one doesn't. There is no vision to indicate that as Mole's over the wall. Baron number 2.
I think OMG have to get to the Baron through the top side right here. Alielie is in a great position, and if you look at his Mega Gnar bar, that's actually perfect for the potential Wuming engage. They do force off the Alistar from the Raptor ramp. That's the most crucial part about this positioning from Alielie. Really smart of him to come through the mid lane. And that's just going to mean that V5 can't hold their formations together. They're not going to be able to cut up OMG's composition, so they decide to back out. And the beauty about the poke composition is you can come to objectives late. You can actually be the second one on the scene and just keep on chucking people out.
Also, you don't have to be worried if you lose all your vision, right? You essentially send your poke into the brush and you'll spot out anyone who's there, or you'll be able to face check essentially with Mole, with the portal jump in some regard too. So for V5, not worried about that as they back away. Vision is cleared by OMG, but we are getting closer towards this next dragon. It is a mountain dragon that'll make it near impossible for V5 to die to OMG. Gives them a bit more time, and everything's going to have to be that much more perfect from OMG's setup and engage you mentioned earlier in the game for them to get a win here and keep the series alive. It is only a 1,000 gold lead at 25 minutes into the game, but still, we already talked about this, Clement. Poke comps that find themselves ahead, 2 items on Mole, and WeiWei being so far ahead with the Void Staff picked up as the second item of choice, making it really hard for OMG to be anywhere near this team right now.
Yeah, right now, like WeiWei and Mole, if they land their combos in succession, they can actually just delete someone straight off the map. So, like, it's very difficult for OMG to actually clear, and I think OMG are actually doing the right thing here. They're not trying to go in early. If you go in early without the intention of engaging, then that just means the poke comp has so much more time to work with. And what I think we're going to see OMG do is that they're going to come in fairly late onto this Drake. Okay. Good attempt by Aki. They're trying to catch someone out. Doesn't really work. And now with the Drake almost about to come up, this is when OMG are actually going to strike. Their best bet is if V5 somehow funnel themselves into this Drake pit and they can catch everyone out at the same time. But instead, they're going to go for a turn, which personally I find pretty risky. Yeah. And if you look at Alielie, he has no Mega Gnar bar.
ppgod's ready to go in. If the trouble bubble flies through Mr. Chu, then they're going to be caught out. Also, without the Weaver's Wall from Aki to zone off, to set up the engage how you want it, OMG could be a bit of trouble, and this is what V5 are going to do. They're going to close in the gap. Wuming on the wrong side of the map as well. Look at where Alielie is. Has the teleport available. Langx gets rid of the ward, and OMG are going to run it down the top side of the map. Alielie still mid, and look at this. OMG want to find a way out.
Extremely risky play coming out from OMG. If Mole found any of the poke right there, it would have been game over, and now Wuming's in trouble.
The flash comes through from ppgod. V5. This could actually get really awkward. Cole goes in onto Mole. Eric follows up. Mole at half health. The follow-up flash, but the root caller from Trigger may have just saved the fight. The hero's entrance late, but not never, as the seismic shove knocks back 2. But Trigger is the person you should be focusing in on this fight. Langx has done that front booty, while the back booty was all about Trigger. It turns double into a triple. Give him the quadra kill. He deserves it. WeiWei flashes in and takes away the glory, but V5 will take away all the lives from V5.
Super questionable play around the map from OMG. They corner themselves on the top side of the map, and then you see Wuming break away from the team. So it was a very easy chase down, and in those narrow corridors with a lot of brushes, it was so easy for Trigger to actually just remain completely untouched throughout that entire fight. You know, they were focusing super hard on the Zoe. They do find her in the end, but at what cost is really the question. I just feel like OMG didn't need to play with such a high-risk threshold and without their Mega Gnar bar in this fight. I just don't think that was the play that they were looking for. They try to make the turn actually happen, but they don't tag Mole on the Solar Flare, so he's able to walk out, and you see a beautiful Blade Caller plus Eric going down on the first salvo of the fight. And just look at Trigger right here. This is open season for him. Nobody is touching him. They can't find him in the brush. There's a really good piece of terrain right there coming out from the Mountain Soul, even helping the Xayah out. And he's able to clean house.
And Langx, you know, being a pretty big impactful member of these fights as well. Quadra denied, still mad about it, but Trigger played well in the fight. The Root Caller really saved the day. The Blade Caller, excuse me. I'm talking about Ivan all of a sudden. Clement, you should have corrected me on that one, brother. You know, you said you're a play-by-play. You said you knew the ability.
In the PCS, so I didn't really know about that one.
That's fair enough. You know, you get your Ivan days, you get happy about it. But onto the back of this game, it's a 5k gold lead, and stepped over the trouble bubble. Wuming luckily had the Justice Punch available before he got bursted out. Mole over the wall once again. It gets close to hitting these skill shots, and with this lead, with Baron buff in hand at 28 minutes in the game, V5 are taking control of this game, trying to make this a 2-0 before our very eyes, and an under 1 hour series to welcome them back to the LPL after the break.
OMG, they're standing on their last legs. They do have all of their ultimates right now, and I just want to see a good combo come out from Cold and Wuming. If they find the backline, they still have a chance, but they have to pull the trigger now or the attrition's going to kill them.
They're going to lose the first inhibitor on the top side. Clement will continue with the middle inhibitor as well. Bottom wave doesn't matter as ppgod's just going to hex flash in front of our eyes. Inhibitor number 2 will drop. And V5 actually getting Weaver's walled off the backline, but the drop bubble hitting on the engage. The poke comes through. ppgod sets it up, and Cold about to die as Langx is absorbing the pressure, absorbing the damage, gets the shield from the Hysterics gauge. Alielie into the backline gets a good stun, but Wuming misses the Justice Punch onto Trigger. The Gale force forward, the feathers at the ready. Aki 1 hit away, and OMG sent away from their own base. V5 can't do any wrong as much as OMG try.
V5 come back into the Lunar New Year really strong. This is the year of the Ox. It might be the year of the Mole,
it's not over yet,
as Jordan has said a lot of times. And I have to quickly swallow my words as I just realized how early the game actually is.
No. Alilie's going to die. You don't have to swallow anything. He's just dead. He was a bit ambitious. Cold's walking forward as well. And that's what you call a nice end. Now, Trigger's full health, but unfortunately they don't get Cold or anyone else. So it won't be the end, Clement, but it feels like it at this point, right? OMG have tried so much to defend, but V5, there's just so many triggers that they have to deal with.
We're going to see this fight again. Once more, the Solar Flare doesn't actually find anyone. You only get the slowdown, so there's no one to pin the target on. And it's such a good play from ppgod once more. He gets a triple man knockup to start up the fight, makes sure that OMG can't walk away. Again, Trigger is just pretty much untouched, just a little bit too short on the Galio Justice Punch right there. And, you know, V5 are not punished for taking away those 2 inhibitors. I just feel like OMG's decision-making and team fighting has been a bit suspect throughout. I felt like they could have gone in earlier before they lost their 2 inhibitors, and that would have given them a bit better chance, and V5 would have been more split up. Instead, they pull the trigger a little bit late, and the execution just wasn't really there. I felt like Cold this time around, not really finding the best of ultimates coming out from his Solar Flare, doesn't tag Mole right there, they don't get the CC chain on, there's no one for the Justice, for the Hero's entrance to actually land into first, so their Wombo combo chain just you know, hasn't been working against this poke comp.
It's sad to see because there's been some really good moments, but too late in the game with the poke just hitting too hard. Aki again with the Weaver's Wall. This hits out ppgod, but you know what? I wouldn't care if I'm this Alistar. Unbreakable Will means Solar Flare is Jack Diddley as he goes in for the engage. Wuming just punch to buffer it, but into the backline. Langx once again doing his job. Trigger forward. This Xayah can do no wrong. The poke lands through onto Alielie. One member after one member gets dropped down. Langx finally getting some credibility here, 2-1 and 12. It was a team effort, it was a great effort, it was a solid effort to knock down OMG yet again with V5 scaling into the 5-4.
Really strong performance for them. Once again, I felt like V5 kind of blew open this game by a misplay around Baron from OMG. If I'm looking at the tape, if I'm the coach for OMG, this is definitely where I tell my team to look around. In game 1, it was the Baron check that cost them 5 kills, and that just blew the game wide open for V5. And in this game around as well, before the Baron buff, V5 were actually only ahead by 2,000 gold. It was definitely a game that, even though, you know, Wuming was very far behind, that OMG could have came back into. Instead, they corner themselves on the wrong side of the map, get picked off one by one, and that blew open a 4,000 gold lead on the side of V5. So, you know, they really have to think about how they're dragging the enemy team across with these objectives and how they want to approach this Baron pit, because that has been the downfall for OMG, and it felt a little bit too easy for V5 to pick up on the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, easy is the right word, right? You know, they punished mistake after mistake, made their own in game number 1, but it didn't matter. And this was an under 1 hour series, Mr. Chu. It was like 55, 56 minutes. And this is what you want to see out of V5. For the fans out there that have become fans of V5 themselves, this is a team that has so much potential and has so much growth that we've seen on our screens that continues to be, they continue to grow, excuse me. So it is good to see V5 mustering up after the break, and now sitting 5 and 4. They're currently above top esports, above IG, sitting with the Rare Atoms, the JDGs just under there. It is really nice to see that V5 have come off this break and return to the best of V5 that we've already seen at the start of this split.
I do want to congratulate them as well. This was one of the best games that I think we've seen Trigger ever play. Really good positioning throughout the team fights. He was never hit up by any of the crowd control coming in. And, this is a guy that has been having a pretty quiet entry, filling out the shoes for Y4 on this V5 roster. A lot of times I think he's going to be measured up to Sam D to see if he fills in for that great breakout season in 2020 where V5 really came and burst open onto the scene. So, we had a lot of questions about Trigger. He didn't really look that hot coming in before Lunar New Year, but him having a good debut performance on the Xayah shows a lot of different variety that this V5 composition could have, and I think most importantly allows them to play a bit more of the late game. That was the biggest concern that we had about V5. When you're talking about a 15-minute win or bust sort of team and the meta shifting later and later, having a hyper carry that you can rely on is going to be so important.
It's really nice because as well, like what we noticed with Y4 and Sam D is they were role players, right? They were facilitators as an AD carry in a meta when we had Ashe, Jhin, and what they added to the team was, all right, well, we are going to supplement everything that's good about V5, like Mole and WeiWei, and be part of the addition of V5 rather than part of a better solution. And the better solution here has been that Trigger steps up alongside Mole. Trigger is, as you said, that late game solution that can put V5 into a very good state. And what we saw here was them closing out the game cleanly. We didn't see any mega throws from V5, which was nice, Clement. We're all talking EDG versus V5. Lyric still has nightmares about it. I tuck him in and I say, don't worry, V5 are going to be a playoff team. And then that puts him to sleep. But otherwise, man, that nightmare stuck in his mind, stuck in my mind now. And no one will ever forget it. So V5 up from here against OMG gives a lot of faith that they'll continue to be a good playoff team.
Yeah, I could definitely see, Jordan hunched up in a corner, sucking his thumb and thinking about Mole running into Nexus towers. I'm so glad he has someone like you in quarantine to soothe those fears and to tell him that everything is okay.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I still think V5's mid-game is still one of those really questionable mid-games. I think you saw it in this series as well. Game 1, super dominant position, pushing it down, waste 2 ultimates, and then just completely capitulate in the mid-game. So V5 is still one of those teams where I feel like they have a very clear identity and a very clear idea of how they want to play the first 15 minutes out on their composition. They've always been good at that. Yep. But past that point is where you'll have a lot of the question marks coming in. And I think the main issue for them is they really aren't a top tier team fighting team. This is not a team that I feel like is going to do well when the games shift later into Elder Drake 10-man team fights. That's kind of the fear that is coming for most V5 fans. Maybe ppgod can ward off those fears. Maybe he can put you to sleep at night. But so far, I'm still leaving a question mark on that area of V5's play.
Yeah, I guess if Trigger can show us what he showed us here, right, where he is that, he can be that great team fighting AD carry, then he'll have to go further and show that, like, right, if we put a lot of resources into Trigger, that he can transition games into what the meta, as you were talking about, could potentially become, right? Hyper carries coming through, or at least, look, let's put a bar on that. Jinx may be coming through, more responses in the form of potential hyper carries, games going later to those elders, those big team fights that loosen up and that loosen up the state of the game and end it from there. So I think there's a lot of questions about V5 and how do they get from the middling playoff team, potential playoff team, I should say, into that echelon that is RNG, EDG, FPX, maybe IG, JDG, top esports, WE, so on and so forth. So WE feel like they're a little bit below and they want to get out of that round 1, out of that, now King of the Hill bracket.
True. And if you think about the teams that are ahead of them, RNG, EDG, what were I can't really remember the other ones off the top of my head, but those two have very clean. Oh, and W, of course. Those 3 teams have super clear team fight identities. I think FPX really isn't one of them, but those 3 teams I think are the teams to look in the new patch, and with games slowing down and with jungle snowball being limited a lot more, especially very explicitly from the Riot design team. So if the games are going slower, if we're seeing more team fights, I definitely think teams with hyper carries like Jomong, Gala, and Viper are going to be the top teams to beat. They are going to come ahead just because they have that much more flexibility in playing with different ranges and understanding how different engage tools actually work out. On the other hand, V5, they don't really have a team fighting identity. That's the thing that I really worry about them. They do have a bit of that split pushing identity that they carried over from 2020, especially out of players like Mole and Langx. But the 5v5 is going to be the test, and I think it's going to be the biggest barrier they would need to overcome if, like you said, they want to make it into that semifinal stage.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential in the roster. And again, we're just waiting for our MVP, and then we'll be getting onto an interview with RNG and Rogue Warriors coming up after this. But I think a great way to finish and cement this series is the fact that V5 moving forward can rely on Trigger. And he's actually the MVP for this game, number 2, Clement. I think Trigger's played very well today and shown us that there is an AD carry that you can rely on. It's a shame this picture doesn't show the godlike tier of his hair, but the damage percentage certainly does.
Does prove him right there. 32% of the damage coming out. And this is quite interesting in the turn for Trigger. As we did talk about, it's his debut on Xayah. He's actually only played Samira and Kaisa before. So he's been much more of a skirmishing AD carry, just one of the carries of the 3 that you could potentially lose in the team fights. But this time around, watching him actually keep his distance and making sure that he's the last man standing when in those winning team fights is a breath of fresh air. It's something that we are going to continue to monitor and see if Trigger can fill up that hyper carry role and allow V5 to go deeper into the game. This was a great start, a great indication. We are going to see it. We're going to have to try and see if he can play more of that hyper carry style in the future games.
Nice to see Langx linking up with him as well, and I think as well ppgod was like his babysitter a lot of the time, even though he didn't really need babysitting. ppgod was like the friend that was stuck to him, so nice to see that we have the team of V5 syncing up so much cleaner than we did in the past when V5 were having those issues to the mid to late game. There's a lot to talk about here with this V5 roster, but a Trigger at the very least showing up nicely. Let's be honest, probably better than he did on APK. I don't think Trigger, I mean, we talked to Atlas before, and Trigger wasn't this standout 80 carry. He wasn't a memorable name, but here I've been told we do not have an interview, ladies and gentlemen. A 2-0 from V5 over OMG to cap off the night, or at least start it off, as Rogue Warriors and